I have a lot of creators who come to me and they'll say, but like, what exactly do I need to do? And I'm like, you actually just need to throw spaghetti at the wall for a little. Like, give yourself a month to just like start playing with different things, see what feels good, brainstorm like who you want to be talking to, what conversations you want to have. Those things are actually really important. I do not think creators need to start with a whole plan. I think you need to start with an intention and kind of a direction of where you think you might want to go. Play a little, give yourself like a month or two to play, and then hopefully by the end of that, you've come out with a more clear, like, this is the direction I want to go, who it's for, what I'm doing, why it might matter to them. And because you've been experimenting, you probably already have gone a little bit out of your comfort zone, have figured out a style that you really love.
Welcome to the Chingona Revolution podcast, where we will bring out your inner badass Latina, overcome self-doubt, help you gain clarity, and pave your own path, all while leading with courage. I am your host, Latina coach and speaker, Erica Cruz. Hello. Welcome back to this week's episode of Chingona Revolution podcast. This is your host, Erica Cruz. I just got back from Puerto Rico last night after seeing Bad Bunny in concert. It was such an amazing trip, and there was so many fellow content creators in Puerto Rico. I actually ran into a few of them in person, and I also have been editing some of my content from there. And it was just perfect timing that I had this interview lined up, because if you have ever wanted to be a content creator or have had dreams of being an influencer, but don't know exactly where to start, or maybe you already are creating content and you don't know how to monetize your content, then you do not want to miss this podcast interview. In this episode, we're not talking about just owning your power, but we're going to show you what it looks like in real time. Today, I'm sitting down with Lissette, who is a powerhouse Latina entrepreneur. She's a content creator and the CEO of Influence with Impact. Lissette is a former director of influencer marketing turned business coach and talent strategist who helps creators turn their influence into income without losing their soul behind the brand. She has worked with Fortune 500s. She's led campaigns that won Shorty Awards, as well as now is mentoring a new wave of creators and building businesses rooted in intention, not just algorithm hacks. Lissette and I met through TikTok many years ago, and she's been somebody that I look at as a thought leader in this space. And in this conversation, we talk about building a personal brand that feels like you, how to advocate for yourself and your rates, even when it makes you feel nervous. We talk about the difference between being a creator and an entrepreneur, and why the energy that you do create with is just as important as the strategy that you use. So whether you are a coach, a creator, or a CEO in the making, this episode is your permission to take up space and show up fully as yourself. Let's get into it. Lissette, welcome to Chingona Revolution podcast. I'm so happy that you're here.
I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be so fun.
It is. I think my listeners are going to find so much value because, I think maybe like 10 years ago, wanting to be an influencer when you grew up, right? Or wanting to become an influencer was like something that was either embarrassing or not really heard of, or maybe people thought it wasn't a real job. But now it's such a normal thing. I think everybody wants to have a personal brand, right? Not even like maybe call themselves an influencer. And you are the best person to have on the podcast to talk about this, because you are a creator yourself. You support creators. You've even worked on the brand side, which we'll talk about what all that means. So, for the few people who may not know who you are, because I feel like everybody who follows me probably follows you too, tell us a little bit about your background. Who's Lissette?
Yeah. Wow. Every time I ask this question, I'm like, I can give you the fancy formal one, or like, I love matcha and DIY my baseboards over the weekend. But both are true. And so I'm Lisette, I'm Latina, I'm Cuban Ecuadorian, and I am the founder of Influence with Impact. And Influence with Impact, we always say, is a creator consultancy. So it's very unique in the sense that we are on the creator side as it relates to what we do, but we have services all across training brands on how to work with creators, supporting creators with building out their career, their personal brand, and of course, all the tools to monetize, work with brands. We have things like a calculator, scripts, etc. And then we also support with talent management. So creators who are already working full time with brands will just take over the negotiation and running that side of the business. But all of that was built because I have a lot of experience in the influencer marketing space. So I started now 13 years ago. I just did the math in my head. I actually started as a PR person, but because I was the young millennial at all the places I worked at, they always said, "Oh, bloggers, you work with them, right? YouTube, what is that? You work with them." And I just kind of accidentally got dropped into influencer marketing roles before influencer marketing was even a real thing. And I remember when I paid my first blogger, it was a mom blogger. She was building a kid's birthday party, using our brand and product. We paid her $300, and I said, I know how to write blogs. Why the hell am I not doing this? So that is the day that I also built in the side hustle of being a content creator. So for the entirety of this 13-year career, I've either worked brand side, the creator side, or as founder of my own company. So really having that 360 view of the creator economy and influencer space is something I'm proud of.
Yeah, definitely. Oh man. And with, whenever you say the brand side, for people who may not know what that means, because I've worked with brands, so I understand what it means, but people who are very new to this space may not know exactly what that means. Can you just differentiate that?
Yeah. So the brand side is us as the brand hiring the creator, paying you, giving you the brief, making the campaign. And then the creator side is where I myself or with on behalf of my creator clients, we are the creator seat. So negotiating with them, asking them how much you want to get paid for, making the content that ends up going live.
Amazing. And I love the name of your brand, of your business, because it's influence with impact, right? And I feel like people typically don't put those two words together. They think of influencer, and that this is shifting and changing, but at least a few years ago, it was like people thought about skinny tea or the little like growth hair gummies. So tell us a little bit about like this business that you've built that has put people before platforms, right? And like, what is it to be a creator with impact in a space that a lot of times can really glorify um like virality, right? Or numbers rather than impact.
Yeah, a fun piece of lore actually is it used to be called influence to impact, but after getting with my trademark lawyer, we realized that was actually trademarked. So we went with, but it all worked out. But I say this to say because I thought that influence and influencer was such a dirty word in our industry. So the point of the nameplate in the business was we'd go from influence to impact. So like an influencer can become an impactful person. But when I was thinking about it, and again, just divine intervention of having to change the name, it actually is more about those things working together. Because, yeah, you are an influencer, you have influence. Just own the word, right? But I know when people say air quotes, it's a dirty word, they just mean it's shallow or, all you care about is selling stuff. So if you do it with impact, it eliminates that almost like, stigma around the word influencer. So really, really deep into why I built the name. But that's what I try to make sure all my clients embody, right? Like you asked, influence with impact means, yeah, I might be a beauty creator, but I'm doing it because I want people to feel confident in their own skin. I might be a parenting creator, but for me, it's helping moms who are struggling with postpartum anxiety. And it doesn't all have to be so deep. I remember I had one creator, she was a fashion creator, still is, and her thing was just making really fun videos of her creative, super colorful looks. And she was like, I feel like I'm not doing anything important though. And I said, okay, let's go back to your story. Why do you care about colorful looks? Like, why do you like dressing that way? And she said, I feel like I was always forced to like be quiet or make myself smaller. I didn't really wear a lot of color until after college when I finally had a little bit more confidence. And I'm like, so do you think that the colorful clothes you're sharing is with the intent for others to, be loud, to build more confidence in their lives? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, that doesn't have to be in your bio, but that has to be with the intent, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're going to be making content against the algorithm, like you said. And the day that you don't get 50,000 views on a video, you're going to be really sad about it. But if you're like, you know what? I got 1,000 views, but I know that the real purpose of why I'm sharing this is because one more person is going to go pick up that neon green jacket tomorrow, and I'm going to feel really good about that. That is influence with impact.
Oh, that's such a great response, especially what you differentiated, that it doesn't have to be stated, but it has to be internally, it has to be within you and it has to be within your intent, because you're right. If not, when you post something and it doesn't go viral or it doesn't give you the results you want, you're more likely to give up. So you have to understand your why behind it. And funny enough that like the things that we kind of expect to go viral, they usually don't, because we're almost like forcing it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many times where creators are like, I have this amazing idea. And I'm like, great, post it. It doesn't do well. And I'm like, what if it became a series though? Can you post it a few more times or like a few different ways?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden on video 10, it takes off. And it's
Mhm.
not that, oh, video 10 was better than the others. To your point, like, it's just that we finally got consistent and we started posting without caring that much. And that's what I try to get a lot of my clients to do is like truly disconnect from the numbers because I firmly believe the money does follow in different ways, right? Which we can all jump into, but
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that. And I think we can all get caught up on the numbers because you and I met through TikTok and my TikTok blew up. And then I ended up getting most of my clients from, so my TikTok blew up. I started a coaching business. Then I started getting most of my clients from Instagram. So of course I started focusing more on Instagram. My content was then more tailored to my coaching business rather than just creating content to create content. And what happened? My account stopped growing, which is I can see why. But I think a big part of it was like, oh, my followers aren't growing. Why invest time in there? And more recently, I was like, wait. Like, why did we start creating content in the first place? And it was really like creative to create impact and to give people the resources that we wish we had. And as soon as I kind of came back to that, I posted a video like a week ago and it didn't go viral, but it was the first video that went over 10,000 views. And then last night, I just got back from Puerto Rico. I was there for the Bad Bunny concert. So exciting. And as you know, Bad Bunny's new album has some salsa in it, and I love salsa dancing. So I was at the concert. He brings out the salsa band, and the song Baile Inolvidable comes on, and I was so excited. And I asked my cousin, hey, can you just record a clip of me dancing? And she's like, oh, this is going to be great because there's Bad Bunny, there's the salsa band, and then there's you dancing. So she goes to go record the clip, and then the guy sitting directly behind me was like, hey, can I dance with you? And I was like, oh, okay. Why was he a like salsa DJ from New York that knew how to dance really well? And we end up dancing and he posts this video on TikTok and it's like at 500,000 views. And it was just out of nowhere. But what was the intent there? The intent was like, we were two people who love salsa music that were so excited that this modern artist is bringing back salsa. And we were two people just having fun. And of course, that one, like even Ritz Crackers, like commented on it. And it was just this reminder of like, this is the joy of creating content. But I think we've lost that and we've gotten so focused on, is this going to get me the money that I want? Is this going to let me leave my job? So all of that to then ask this question, what would you say to somebody who's just getting started and they know they want to make money from this, but that intent of wanting to make money from it is blocking them from even generating money?
right. Oh man, I love this question. So if you want to make money as a content creator, I'm sorry to say you have to make content. So kind of in the conversation that we're having, it is the reality that you have to figure out what content you want to make, who it's for, why it matters to you and or to them, and how you can stick with it consistently. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people miss. Consistency is such a big buzzword, but for me consistency just means I like the thing I'm doing enough to just keep doing it. It doesn't have to be that complicated, right? So once you figure out what you want to make, you know, who it's for, why it might matter, figure out your style, right? Like play with vlogs, play with speaking to camera, play with not just trends because trends come and go, but like different styles until you find what feels comfortable for you to keep creating around. And that first part of really figuring out what, who, why, that does take experimenting. That does take getting out of your comfort zone. I have a lot of creators who come to me and they'll say, but like, what exactly do I need to do? And I'm like, you actually just need to throw spaghetti at the wall for a little. Like, give yourself a month to just like start playing with different things, see what feels good, brainstorm like who you want to be talking to, what conversations you want to have. Those things are actually really important. I do not think creators need to start with a whole plan. I think you need to start with an intention and kind of a direction of where you think you might want to go. Play a little, give yourself like a month or two to play. And then hopefully by the end of that, you've come out with a more clear, like, this is the direction I want to go, who it's for, what I'm doing, why it might matter to them. And because you've been experimenting, you probably already have gotten a little bit out of your comfort zone, have figured out a style that you really love. A good example I like to share is I had one client who was like, I just like, I'm not showing up right now. And we asked her to get really uncomfortable. We asked her to go and make videos, either walking down the street, selfie cam mode, sitting in her car, selfie cam mode, and just talk. Like, we do not need you to, figure out how to do a really engaging vlog. We don't need you to do anything other than just share the message. And she did that. Is that the style of video she wants to do forever? No. But the uncomfortable got her through to continue being consistent in the other ways she intended to be, right? Because then all the other stuff doesn't have to feel so perfect. So, really long answer to say, you've got to really just figure out that direction, but you won't figure it out unless you play and experiment and give yourself room for that.
Oh, yeah. And then even whenever you do figure it out, people evolve, right? Like now I'm talking about manifestation. Well, before I was talking about courage, and it's like you're going to shift and you're going to evolve, but you're never going to get to that place unless you take the first step. So I love that answer.
And you bring up a really good point of pivoting, and that could be a whole podcast in itself. But a lot of creators, like I was saying, they are so afraid of getting it wrong that when they come in with like a hot plan, they're like, this is what I'm making, and don't give themselves the room to experiment or have that wiggle room to move around a little bit, they end up burning out because then they feel like I'm stuck here. Or to your point, imagine if you said, I've only created about courage, I am stuck here, then you're going to be really unhappy and burn out. Your audience is going to notice. People are going to stop engaging. But if you're able to say, actually, what I really enjoy right now in this chapter of my life is talking about manifestation, let me almost like wiggle people there, right? It's not like I'm talking about courage and now I'm going to be a food recipes account. That's a hard pivot. I'd probably suggest to start a new page. But like you start trickling in manifestation stories, you start trickling in those combos until you move them into the new direction you want to be in. So that kind of like the way of experimenting is something that will stay with you, even if later on you want to change a little bit of what you're doing.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I just thought about this because you became a mother, right? So I think that some pivots, they just naturally occur whenever life happens, right? Like if people go through divorces, when people become mothers, like there's naturally pivots that will occur and that will redirect you. And those like they almost yeah, they're almost inevitable, right? Have you seen that with your creators as well, especially people who've been in the space for a long time?
Yeah, I think this is a good way to use myself as an example. As life changes, we change, we're people. That's why I'm a big believer. I really only work with personal brands. So if you own like a product-based business, I don't serve you as well because I have completely different opinions. And a big conversation is if you're following a person, first of all, we have to see the person because otherwise you are locking yourself in as a product without room to grow, without room to change. And I've seen this happen throughout, not with clients that I work with, but just really big creators, right? They'll get to 1 million followers off of one thing, but we know nothing about them as people. And the
Mm,
moment a circumstance changes in their life, people tune out. A really good example is I do not know their handle, but there was the corporate guy creator
oh,
yeah, who was like would make funny videos about romanticizing working in corporate America, like vlog style, whatnot. And then, of course, he eventually was making enough money as a creator that he quit his corporate job, and people stopped following because they said, well, we were here for your corporate experience. And that sucks for him. And of course, I would say I understand the sentiment of what the heck, people don't want to just support whatever I'm doing next. But if people don't know the person, they're
yeah.
not going to want to do that. So, big
Mm,
believer in no matter what you're creating about, whatever niche you're in, whatever category you're in, we need to see the person with boundaries, right? Like you get to the right to privacy and boundaries because then once you start changing, things just change with you. And I think, again, as myself as an example, becoming a mother, it's so funny because I said, well, I don't really think I want to like talk about being a mom or like talk about my baby. Like it's, I'm a girl boss, okay? And after having her, I went on what I called my faux maternity leave, which was I would still create content, but I would have zero strategy, spaghetti at the wall, just post. and like let things happen and really, again, give myself room to like figure out what feels good for me. And through that, obviously, the only thing that sucked up my 24 hours of the day was having this child. And coming back to work with this child, I realized there was actually a story here about being an entrepreneur who's also a mother. No, my page is not really going to show like my child and what she's doing. It is me, my perspective as someone who has to balance both worlds now. And what's nice is that while yes, that will attract parents, I get so many non-parents who talk to me about, I'm a caregiver and I resonate with a lot of what you're sharing. I'm someone who has 3 jobs right now, so I resonate with a lot of what you're sharing with like limited time running a business. So it has worked out because again, I didn't hard pivot into, and we are mom account now. It is, I started leaking the conversations, connecting the dots for people. I will lose people who do not care or who maybe are triggered, right? By like, I do not like this topic. I do not want to watch or follow. But then I think we've built such a bigger community of people who, again, maybe directly relate to my experiences or adjacently do and think it's interesting. So definitely want to make sure the person is shown in everything you do to do this successfully.
Ooh, as you were sharing that, it also made me think about all these faceless accounts. What's your opinion about the faceless accounts?
I mean, you can make a quick buck because faceless accounts have unlimited access to really go viral. Because think about it, if I have to film a bunch of videos hoping that one of them is going to hit, that's a lot of time off my plate. But when you're using AI and stock footage, you can literally just sit on your computer and post 30 videos in an hour.
Yeah.
Can you make a quick buck? Sure. Can you build a brand? No. So the moment the algorithm stops being on your side, you're done. The moment that the product that you're selling is not interesting enough, you are done. And what is crazy is the only things I've seen the faceless account sell is like how to create a faceless account or like how to sell a product with social media.
Hmm.
That has a cap, right? Like you can't all learn how to have faceless accounts that are selling faceless account tips. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's like a pyramid scheme, honestly. And
For
so
sure.
for
That's exactly what
me,
I thought about. As you said, it's just teaching you how to do the same thing.
yeah, it is like I will teach you how to do this, and then you'll teach someone how to do this, and then eventually everyone will know how to do this, so no one has to sell. And I again, just as like a business strategy, highly do not recommend. But I can understand the appeal of making a quick buck, and everyone has a different financial situation.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. Okay, so back to the question I was asking earlier. What made you go from working with a brand to becoming a full-time creator, coach, and then eventually starting your own brand?
Yeah. So what's interesting is I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I actually used to say this all the time where I was like, yeah, the one thing I'll never do is run my own business. But I think it's also just like the Latino ingrained in me that was like, you went to school for this, you must do this, you must have this job forever, right? And I was about to get to the VP level. So I was up for a promotion that year. And I thought, VP, again, in my family's culture is like, wow, like our daughter is a vice president at an advertising agency. I was like, that's the end. So what comes after that? Nothing. And I started to have this existential crisis where I was like, I have no idea like what the point of this even is. And then I started reflecting throughout I would say last 4 years before that, all of the experiences I had was building influencer programs at these big agencies that I was at. I was building, if you're in the creative, media world, you might know what I mean by capabilities decks. And capabilities decks are basically the advertising agency, whenever they go to potentially get a new client, it's a deck of like what we do and like our point of view and our systems and our frameworks. And I built all of that from scratch for a lot of these big agencies. So I, was like, wait, I'm being their entrepreneur. I am building these things from scratch. I go to the new business meetings and I pitch clients for them as it relates to influencer. I also at the same time remember was working as a creator. So I remember that year I had finally hit the milestone of I had basically earned my first ever New York salary that year, which was $60,000. That's how I moved to New York, was on a $60,000 salary. Don't at me. Yes, I was broke. And basically I said, well, if I could survive in New York on 60K and content creation is bringing me 60K per year, I could definitely quit my job right now as a safety net, right? So like that was really it was a financial decision to like literally pull the plug. And
Yeah.
once I made that income goal, I
Yeah.
felt like I was good. I also just transparently had 3 to 6 months of emergency savings at the time. So that is just me personally. I know some people just jump and it works out, but that was not me. So once I had that, I realized, Lisette, you've been the entrepreneur. Just go do it yourself and see what happens. And that whole year, so I actually quit December 2019. So I spent my first year in entrepreneurship through the pandemic. That's a story for another day. But I said, I'll give myself a year. So through
Mhm.
the end of December 2020, if I don't make a single dollar, I will just go look for a corporate job again. I feel qualified enough to get one. And if it works out, right, if I end up meeting, my financial needs to pay my rent, to have flexible disposable income, we're going to keep going. And it really was just one of those like, all right, it worked for 1 year, let's keep going. It was not, there was no business plan. It was, I believe in myself and my network enough that people will hire me because they know my value. So that requires showing up. And so that transition was, I knew that again, as a content creator, I had to show up because I was getting brand partnerships. But that's when I also made sure my platform always had, it was called the Marketable Millennial before. So it always had like creator tips and, market, like how to market yourself in this industry. That was the point of it. But now I said, okay, so as a content creator, right? So the lifestyle creator, I'm getting brand deals. But if I want clients, I need to show up as an authority as well. So
Mhm.
that year, I kind of worked on making sure my platform, again, micro pivots, making sure my platform like still kept that lifestyle tone that brands liked of me, but then showed up as an authority, as an expert way more than ever before. I used to do this a lot on my blog, but now it was like Instagram, TikTok. Like you guys needed to know I was the go-to creator monetization person. And
Mhm.
that really worked out because that's what allowed me to get coaching clients. That's what allowed me to get people buying courses and the creator templates and all of these things. I'll
Wow.
never forget, I had a video go viral that was about the platforms I would sign up if I was a brand new creator. And that video ended up going viral. Or by viral, it did hit 1 million, but in the beginning, it hit like 10K, and I was like, oh my God, I've made it, right? So, this, oh my God, I've made it. And that day, I will never forget, I literally went on my, you know, editing apps and I created a PDF with all of the platforms I would join because I had this in my brain. It was 50 platforms. I hyperlinked it. I had a virtual assistant at the time who helped and did it with me or for me, like the formatting. I put it up on my link in bio. As the video kept going, I updated my caption and I was like, link in bio, buy my guide. It was $5. Okay. Once it hit 1 million, that day or that week, really, I made $1,000 off of that product. And I was like,
Wow.
oh my God, I've cracked it. I was like, I know, if I just keep sharing these tips and,
Yeah.
funnel it into this program or product or scripts, I've got it, right? So it was nice to see that first year was literally just experimenting and just like, okay, I'm gonna go make this PDF. It had no design, no, I did not have a color palette. I just put the information out there. And so that whole first year, it was really just that. It was like experimenting, making sure I kept showing up because it was important. But for me to make money, I did need to have the services to, send people to. So kind of a long story and a tangent, but that was the big decision maker was like, if I could make it by with this amount of money, let's just see what else I can do. And I spent that first year just seeing.
Yeah, and you bring up so many points because in my program, Courage Driven Latina, it's literally about like having the courage to go after the thing that you want. And a lot of the blocks that you mentioned are things that I hear my clients go through all the time. It's like, I spent so much time getting this degree. I need to work in this. I've had, I have benefits. I have this job and title that like my parents never had access to. So like all the things that kind of keep us in that safety net. But I love your reframe where you were like, yeah, I can just go back to get a job. I'm literally already an entrepreneur, but there's a cap to how much I can earn. So thank you for sharing that. As on the topic of money, because I know I've asked like, okay, for people who are just getting started, I want to talk a little bit about negotiating and how to advocate for yourself as a creator. So let's say there's somebody listening who's already created content and perhaps they have already worked with a brand, but are having a hard time negotiating. Obviously you worked on the brand side, so you already kind of knew what was going on behind the scenes. But then also as a creator, you've had to like advocate for yourself. And if I actually remember correctly, and I could be remembering not that accurately, but I think you've even shared how you've been very transparent, and you've done it in such a professional way where you've like, blocked out any emails, but you apparently shared like people when people were lowballing you, um or maybe even it wasn't you, it was somebody else's page, but like the agency accidentally CC'd them, and they were like, can't we just go with one of the white creators we typically go with or something like that? She was brown, she wasn't Latina, I want to say she was like some type of like I think maybe Indian. Yeah, anyways, but she blocked out the names as well. So all of this to ask the question of how do we negotiate as women of color?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love this topic. So, one of the very sad realities of when I had a lot of brand time, so this might have changed lately, and I hope it has, is the people who would ask for the least amount of money were Black and brown creators. And it was just insane to see that a lot of us, and I think to your point, you work with so many women in this space who like we are afraid to ask for more because we are taught to not like calladita se ve más bonita, like don't ask for too much, be grateful. And that's a whole societal problem, right?
Mhm.
So, of course, myself in the brand side role, I always did my best to make it as equitable as possible. So, if a white creator was asking me for $5,000 and this creator, this Latina creator, was asking me for three, I'd probably say, hey, I have five. Can we throw an extra story set in there? So kind of like trick them into raising their rates by not just by saying, hey, raise it to 5K, because I think that that actually can be a little bit of a shock.
Right.
So I'd say, we added a story deliverable, right? Just something easy that I know. Or I'd say, we increased the usage, right? And because we did that, we are giving you 5K. So I always tried to make it as equitable as possible. And then on the flip side, try to negotiate down the other creators so that it would be as even as possible. And I did that for a while. And I remember the when working creator side, one of the things that I noticed is whenever I was sharing rates that again felt like the rates I'd see white creators make, and especially white male creators, like that's a whole nother topic. They are like, we are so rare to find in this industry that we're going to ask for three times the amount of money. But when I was sharing my rates, I always made sure to validate with why, which I think there's a conversation that could be had about why do we always have to do this, right? Why do we always have to validate when other people just like go and ask for it? But I know that on the flip side, right, if a brand is seeing a creator's asking for 5K, no questions asked, and another creator is asking for 7K, they're gonna be like, why? I'm gonna go with the five, I'm gonna go with the cheaper one. So
Mhm.
I got into this habit of validating with why so that the number is not the reason they say no. So me asking for more is not the reason they say no. It might be that, hey, the numbers I shared are just like not what you're looking for. You're looking for someone who has more shares or someone who converts really well on stories, and maybe that's not me, but at least I feel like I've validated myself enough where I feel good about myself. Not me
Mhm.
selling to you and hope that you pick me. It's I'm gonna tell you why I'm a badass. I feel really good about it. Take it or leave it. You could say no, but I still feel good about myself. So having those two experiences was really interesting because I really did see that like some of the most amazing creators were undercharging. And again, the reality is as a brand, I can't go back to my CMO or main client and say, yeah, this person was asking for more and this person was asking for less. I'm going to say no to the person who's asking for less. They're going to be like, are you dumb? Take the one who's asking for less. It's way better for us. They're like, way more bang for your buck. You hear that all the
Right.
time in
Mhm.
marketing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase their rates, but I'm going to validate a little bit to my CMO. Oh yeah, we added an extra month of usage, right? Like the least amount of trouble for the creator possible
Right.
so
Yeah.
that they are now boom, their rates are higher. I get to hire them. I get to it's not the cheapest person. It is truly the most value for me because it's a really valuable person for a really awesome rate. So yeah, just seeing both sides has always been very interesting, but I think if you lead with data, it makes things a lot easier to negotiate.
Amiga, I hope you're enjoying the show. We are going to get right back to today's episode, but I just had to drop in and check with you. How are you feeling? How are things going? If you find yourself frustrated or maybe shaming yourself because you have not taken the action that you wanted to take. Maybe you are just tired of starting and stopping or overthinking or worrying about what your coworkers are going to think about you or your family members are going to think about you if you finally start that project that you've been wanting to start. I just want you to know that I see you. I feel you. I overthought starting my Instagram page for 2 years before I actually started it. So I get it. I totally understand. And if you find yourself in this position where you know that you want to make 2024 your year and you're ready to stop procrastinating and start taking action, then I invite you to Courage Driven Latina. Courage Driven Latina is my signature program where you will legit change your life in 90 days because we are going to help you take action on a courage project in 90 days. I also recently introduced the Courage Project Paths, which I'm so excited about. So you essentially get to pick the path that you want to work on, and you can work on more than one path because the program is now 12 months, right? But we recommend one path at a time. And I'm so excited about these paths because we have a confidence courage project path. So if you want to speak up in your relationships or maybe speak up at work, this would be the perfect path for you. Or if you just want to establish more self-trust. The second path we have is the content creation courage project path. So this is perfect for you if you want to create an Instagram page, a TikTok account, or perhaps you are ready to launch your own podcast. We even have a whole podcast course inside of Courage Driven Latina. The third path is the career courage project path. So if you know that you want to be at the director level or the VP level, or maybe you're ready to change your job to a different job, then this would be the perfect path for you. Maybe you're like, you know what, entrepreneurship is cool, but it's not really for me. I really want to be a boss ass mommy. Then this is going to be the path for you. And last but not least, we have the Chingona CEO path. So if you know that you want to be an entrepreneur and you know you want to start your business, whether it's a coaching business or a physical business, if you want to sell a product, then this is the perfect path for you. Again, because this program is now 12 months, you can work on more than one path. Join the waitlist for Courage Driven Latina by going to the link down below in the show notes, because when you join the waitlist, you are going to be the first to know when we open doors, and you may even get some early access. So ensure that you join the waitlist. I cannot wait to work with you. We have some incredible women in this program, and the fact that it's now a year long, we've already seen so much transformation. I can't wait to work with you. Let's get back to the show, and don't forget to join the waitlist. Yeah, that makes so much sense. I feel like we are probably going to need to do a part 2 about this if you would like, because I have so many questions still that are just like popping up in my mind. So what about whenever people are how do people differentiate if something is a legit partnership or not? And my friends come to me all the time with this, like, Erica, and they'll send me the screenshot and they're like, is this legit? Whenever people are like, oh, here's an affiliate link and we'll give you a percentage. Personally, I don't waste my time on that. I don't know if you've seen that work for other people, but especially whenever they're like, we're going to give you a big discount. It's like, no, you should never have to upfront pay for anything. So how do you support like either your clients or your friends with like knowing if something is a legit inquiry or not?
Yeah. The first thing you have to look at is the email of the person. I know that sounds like a given, but so many people have been duped by not realizing it's like adobe@gmail.com. Like that is the first sign. And also, hot tip from one of my friends in tech, you should copy the email into like a browser, because sometimes they'll use like special characters that look like letters. So it might be, Lissette@apple.com, but the A is like a random symbol that just happens to look very closely like an A. But if you dropped it into your browser, it won't take you anywhere. So anyway, that's just like step one. The second thing is definitely the way they personalize it or don't. Like you can tell there are clients who will send us things and say, is this legit? Mm-hmm. And it'll be like, hi, Lissette Calv, or hi, blank and there's nothing, and then the pitch is down there. A brand who wants to work with you will always personalize it to you. They might not personalize like, I love that video that I saw the other day, but like at least it'll say, hey Erica, so lovely to meet you. I've been following you for a bit, or I love how you talk to Latinas in your platform. Here's what we're doing, right? Like literally just a quick intro, human to human, is the biggest green flag, and then the opposite is the biggest red for me. And then, of course, after that, I would say, to your point, asking to pay for anything, even if it's pay for shipping of the product. You should not have to pay for anything when you are working for someone else. There are rare exceptions. Like I work with some creators who are in the food space who have to like go buy the thing at the grocery store, but that's in your contract, right? And that's reimbursable. Or travel creators have to pay for like their accommodations to get reimbursed afterward. But if you are seeing that pitch or in that conversation that you need to pay for anything, huge, huge red flag. You did mention affiliate. I think something that's really interesting about affiliates, some creators who convert really well, like if you post something and it sells, that's amazing for you. I think as long as it's no strings attached, why not, right? So for example, I have a few brands who, like one of them, I'm always looking at my desk. And it's funny because I always say this to creators. I'm like, shop your desk because there's probably a brand to use on there, and there always is. But Rode, the microphones, those are microphones I've purchased in the past. I love them. I use them. And they saw me tag them and they reached out and said, we'd love to make you an affiliate. And, no strings attached. Cool. Because I'm going to talk about you anyway. So signing up for an affiliate program, if I don't have to post, if I don't have to do anything, great. Because I'm probably posting about you anyway. So those are the only instances where I'm like, you could say yes to that. But otherwise, to your point, if that is the sole way that you're making money, it's a big no, a big red flag for me. And what I usually tell my clients to say is remind them that it takes more than one time for a consumer to convert. And that's just a marketing 101. Takes like 7 times for someone to see something and be like, oh, yeah, I should buy that. So for you to convert enough to make the money back in labor, the labor that it takes for you to make content for them, you're going to have to make 7 videos. That's just not fair. So if they'd like for you to guarantee any sort of content, they're going to have to pay a fee for just the sole labor of you existing and making that.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. I love what you said about affiliates, and that makes so much sense. If it's something you're already using and posting about, then it makes sense. I think a lot of inquiries I've gotten are for like these apple cider gummies or, things I'm not posting about. And I'm like, that makes no sense. I'm not going to go out of my way to post something for the chance of getting a few dollars here and there. So thank you for clarifying that, because I think that's such a good like rule of thumb. And then the next thing I wanted to ask you, which you're already kind of getting into, what is it that people should look for within contracts?
Ooh, my favorite thing. I always have to say this is not legal or financial advice, but I'm a big fan of, I have my team and I use this like rubric that we have gotten advice from our attorney on. But the real big things that we're always looking for, number one is so when you are, let me take one step back. When you are negotiating with a brand, you always have to know the deliverables, which means the things you're literally doing, the usage or licensing of your content, any exclusivity, and I'll explain this in a second, the timeline, and also just any other, like I like to ask, for example, about like payment terms, like do you know how quickly I would be paid? That's like a bonus question. But those first ones I said, those are really important because they become the basis of your contract. And if you didn't ask about usage, if you didn't ask about exclusivity, it's a really awkward conversation later. So all that to say, if you ask about these things up front, when you're reading your contract, we want to look for that. So we want to look for deliverables. We want to make sure that everything is super clear as discussed. And let me tell you, probably like 40 or 50% of the time, it's not. You'll see something like, you got hired for one Instagram reel. And then when you go to the deliverables, it says one Instagram reels, minimum 60 seconds, two, 9 by 16 images submitted for cover photos. Like, we didn't talk about any of that. So we're going to remove that, right? Or we're going to say like, the cover photo will be a freeze frame of my video. We're going to say the video is going to be 30 seconds because that's the length of my videos that perform well. Like you're gonna have to like read the deliverables and make sure it's exactly what you intend to make.
Yeah.
The second thing I mentioned was usage and licensing. You can control F, look up license, look up usage, look up perpetuity. And basically, there's going to be sections about how they get to use your content. And organic usage is the most common, meaning the brand can repost it. Right. But then when you get into whitelisting, paid, and this could also be a whole nother podcast about it, but all of those words mean that they're going to be using your content for a longer period of time. So you have to have charge for that because yes, if I post something today and maybe it's a collab post with me and the brand, maybe they're going to repost it within 30 days. That's cool. I don't care. We're partners. Like that feels normal. But if we have, and I just had a situation with a creator like this, let's say a year of usage and a year later, they post this video, and she's actually working with a competitor right at that time because a year has passed. So she's working with a different brand right now in a similar category. Now that brand is like, whoa, 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 we didn't know you were working with our competitor. Oh, shoot. No, it's because I had a year usage, right? So they just happened to repost the video later. So you see how that might affect your work, which is why I want to charge for it. I'm not saying, oh my God, red flag. Yes, like bring it down if you can, but charging for it is just as good because it's guaranteed income now, right?
Yeah.
Then perpetuity is a word I said. I always control F that. That basically means they own your content for the end of time. Another way that they might say this is work made for hire. And that basically means like we own everything you're making in this campaign. And that is something that I will say, like, sadly, like 70% of the time is in a contract, even if we already agreed that it was being licensed in a specific way, it's always there because a lot of legal teams will drop it in just to see. Just like, let's cover, our asses and see if we can like own the content and see if they don't notice. Please notice. Please remove it. And every time I redline that out, they're like, oops, sorry. Like, yes, I know what you're really trying to do, which is like, let's see if we can just like save ourselves there. But those things on usage, I mentioned exclusivity, and I'll go through these quickly, but exclusivity just means like you have to be exclusive to them and not work with anyone else in that category for a certain period of time. Why would we charge for that? Because now we could potentially lose business if a competitor had come. And I think when I say competitors, sometimes people who don't do this regularly are like, well, yeah, ethically, like, I hope you don't work with competitors. But you have to realize that oftentimes it's things like that it's a competitor for the brand, but as a consumer, I wouldn't think is a big deal. So
Mm-hmm.
in the example of the creator with this like year video pops up a year later, it was actually two different destinations. So obviously, people can travel to multiple destinations, but destination A thought destination B was a competitor of theirs, so they didn't want to see that.
Mm.
Another example recently was a creator of ours is working with a probiotic brand, and they basically said the creator has to be exclusive and cannot work with any vitamin company, supplements company, whatever. And this person is in the food space. Yeah, I might not tell people and take this other probiotic next week,
Yeah.
but maybe I'll say, and even myself as a consumer, I like this brand's probiotics, but I really like this brand's protein powder, and I really like this brand's multivitamin. People shop different things all the time.
Right.
So it would be normal for a creator to take those campaigns, but if the brand is saying, no, 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 you have to be exclusive, then you better charge for that. So,
Yeah.
and then the last things, again, like in contract, I'm looking for those nuances. So timeline, want to make sure timeline is clear, and also the timeline is mutually agreed upon. So not just I have to submit content on the 12th. Okay, I submit content on the 12th. Brand provides feedback by the 21st in
Mhm.
order for creator to film by the 30th, so like
Yeah.
really trying to make sure it includes everyone because sometimes that screws creators over. And then I mentioned payment. That's another just nuanced thing that everyone has their own preferences. I personally, net 30 is something I'm used to. So if it's net 30, we're cool. If it's anything more than that, you have to pay me up front. So that's like an example of something that I personally use as a boundary. So for example, if it was net 60, I say you have to pay me net 60 is invoiced the moment our project starts, or at least 50% is invoiced at the moment our project starts. And I do that to protect myself because usually by the time the content is live, now I'm going to get probably paid soon, at least something. And if I
Right.
don't get paid that 50%, red flag, oh my God, I'm taking this down. So just like little ways to protect yourself. I also love to look for revisions and feedback, Control F, because some brands will be like, unlimited revisions. No. You're getting one revision, and that is what I always stick to. At most, I'll allow two, but that's like a really rare case or like a really big company that has a lot of people involved. But yeah, I think those are the big ones. And obviously, a lawyer will say, look for all the other protections like, confidentiality, indemnity, all these words that like you can consult a lawyer on, but typically those things are pretty standardized in contracts and the others are not.
Yeah, totally. And everything that you've mentioned, I've hit like I've learned the hard way with a lot of these, but especially with like the exclusivity, I was doing a partnership with an insurance company, and then there was another insurance company that contacted me about speaking at their event. But because I was doing a video and I had already signed the other contract, I had to say no to the speaking engagement. And luckily, they came back, and this year I'm able to work with them in person because they have like a Hispanic Heritage Month event. And I'm like, oh yay, like I'm so glad it gets to work out. But yeah, it really, like, I should have charged the first company more because I missed out on this other opportunity. We've talked about so many amazing things. You are a wealth of knowledge. I think the last thing that I want to touch on is like people still think that this might not be a real job. So like, can we share some numbers? Like, I'm happy to also transparently share like how much I've made with certain things and like when I've made exceptions and I'm willing to do things for less because maybe it was aligned. But you as a creator, but also as a creator coach, like you don't have to disclose like companies or names or anything. But what are like, like if you could give us maybe follower count and then like how much somebody made, because I think the thing people struggle with is how much do I charge and how do I value myself? How do I know that I'm worth charging X amount, which obviously they are, but think having some hard numbers is going to be helpful for people.
Yes. And just like everyone else who would ask this question, I think we always think about follower as the lead. Where follower leads is probably as line item number one, as I like to say, because yes, there's a reality that if you're a bigger creator, you can slide up and down that just like starting rate. So the typical rate that we see is anywhere from 1 to 7% of your follower count is that like line item number one. 1% would be for something that you're like, oh, I'm really not good at this. For example, a lot of my clients are like, stories, I get like 0 views on stories. So that's going to be a 1% like line item. It's not going to be a big one. But reels that take a bunch of time to produce, that's 7%, right? That's like a starting point number one. I always have to whip out my calculator when I say this because I'm like, I want to give you a literal example and then my brain can't think in that way. So if you have 100,000 followers, as an example, you're probably going to get starting, right? The line item number one is anywhere from $1,000 to $7,000. Okay, so 7,000 would be for like really highly engaged community. Their content is super produced and awesome. But all the things I mentioned just now with contracts, the reason we ask up front is because we want to charge for them. And that is where a lot of creators leave money on the table. That's also where a lot of creators who are smaller can make a lot more money because they get to charge not just for their follower, but for all these other like terms and conditions and ways that brands are using them. Because for example, one popular way of usage, right? You'll see paid usage or whitelisting, which just means that the literal thing you posted on social media, they will put ad dollars behind it so more people will see that thing. Some brands will say, we're giving you exposure. It's not exposure because you're not getting followers from it. You're giving the brand an opportunity for them to get more exposure. But as an example for that, I'll use myself. I have 76,000 followers, I believe. Yes. And I had a video that I posted that did really well organically for me in terms of my community really like loved it, showed up for it. I think I had like 200 comments just from my own community alone. But algorithm, how many views did it get? Like maybe 10,000 views, which I would say again, they could have probably hired a creator with 1 million followers to get way more than that. But they hired me because they really liked my content. And then they boosted that ad. And it has, I think, like 1 million views now because they boosted it, right? So the views as a smaller creator, they can come in other ways. It's really about you making sure that you have, a strong community, strong, I would say, skill in content creation. That's where you can charge up and down. And again, those terms and conditions charge up and down. I personally really always suggest that creators create I'm going to say the word rate card, okay, but we're never sending a brand a rate card because there's nothing worse than having to make a brand do math. But have an internal rate card where you know, all right, so for Reels, I'll use myself as an example. I have 76,000 followers. My Reels start at $4,000. My carousels, like if I had to do photos, $3,500.
Mm-hmm.
My stories, if it was by itself, is 2K, but it is my lowest performing avenue. So if it was part of a campaign, probably just adding like $500 for that. So like these things, you want to start adding them. For usage, I love to use percentages. So I'm basically asking how long, where, and I'm adding 20, 25, 30, 35% depending on how big of an ask it is. And I really just try to like feel it out for myself. For exclusivity, I charge $2,000 per month of just being exclusive to someone. I have, to your point, this is all up for negotiation, right? So the times that I'll usually negotiate that down is if it's a category I truly can't imagine working with another brand in that category,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm so die hard, like I hope Adobe's not listening for this, but I always give them a little discount on exclusivity because I'm like, I literally have never used any other app that isn't Adobe. So sometimes when we're like negotiating, I'm like, the exclusivity part doesn't really matter to me, so it's fine.
How I feel about
But
QuickBooks. They're my partner like that.
yeah, right. You're like, I'm not going to use your competitor anyway.
Yeah,
But you
exactly.
still ask for it. And then when you're negotiating, if it's a little lower budget, you're like, well, that's fine. So all that to say, you have this rate card. When you're negotiating, it makes it so much easier for you to go in and share a rate. But then when you're negotiating, you know what went into that rate. So if they say, sorry, you asked for 7K and sorry, we have five, you can go back, right, and say what really like affected, okay, exclusivity. Let me go back and say, hey, do you mind if we remove exclusivity?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Boom. Now the math makes sense, right? Like now I've met you at a rate that feels good for both of us.
Totally.
In terms of, I would say I want to share some like really good examples, especially for smaller creators. So I think bigger creators, it's obvious that like you can charge just because you have a bigger follower size. I do think actually a lot of really big creators undercharge, which is very fascinating. Like creators with 500,000 followers are charging what creators of 50K are charging, which again, thousands of dollars for someone is life-changing amounts of money. So I think that's what a lot of those big creators think. They're like, wow, someone is paying me. And because I have a big following, I get to just easily charge thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But you're actually undercharging yourself usually because there are creators with 1 million followers charging $20,000 for just one short post. So, but the smaller creators usually are the ones who need the real inspiration. And a lot of the creators that we work with, they are considered micro, with air quotes, which is under 150,000 followers, believe it or not. And those micro creators, I would say on average, creators are earning anywhere from like 3 to 6K per campaign, just like no matter what. Like we have one creator, she's 30,000 followers and never gets paid less than 5K for just one campaign, one post with maybe some stories.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that these smaller creators or the micro creators can charge so much, it's exactly what I said. All of those terms and validating with data, right? So like validating with data or skill. One, using myself as an example, my average campaigns are about $6,500 for like one reel, one story set.
Mm-hmm.
Why? How do I validate this? Because actually data is not my number one. I would say engagement is really good, but I don't get thousands of views. I don't get the views that someone probably, I would say I have very average views at most, but skill, right? So something that sets my campaigns apart is I whip out my professional camera. Everything is storyboarded. Everything is like produced. You can look at all of my ads and I get comments every time being like, this looks like a real commercial. This should be on
Mm-hmm.
television. That is something that I use. So when I go and I tell brands, hey, my rate, my starting rate, I always say 6,800, and then we kind of go up and down from that. 6,800, just to let you learn a little bit more about me and the way I work with ads. This is an example of a really well performing ad. As you can see, I have a lot of engagement, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll say, and most importantly, like I produce my ads really well. Look
Mm-hmm.
at some comments that my community has shared. And I have this canned response that I'm
I
really just,
love that you do that. Yeah.
yeah. And then people are like, that's so exciting. Wow, how cool. We don't have 68, but we have this. And then we'll kind of go back and forth and figure something out. There have been also situations you did ask about like giving discounts. If it is a values based company, if it is maybe like, a company that, has lower budget but is asking for something very simple.
Mm-hmm.
One example is I have a long-term partner now for I think 3 years, 2 or 3 years. They are in the business space and they did not have money to pay my full rates, but they really liked my content. So what we decided on is we'd actually do UGC only, which for those who don't know is user generated content. It's content that you give to the brand, never goes live. So we basically agreed on multiple videos per month that were pre-scripted for me by them that I just sit, speak to camera, and
Nice.
submit to them. Like,
And they use it on
great.
their page, but you aren't required to post it on yours.
Exactly. I don't post on mine. They get what they want out of it, which was my like name and likeness, honestly. And it's a great partnership. It is probably like a quarter of what I'd be paid normally, but it's an easy thing we do every month and we go. There's also some examples where it's like a small Latina owned business or female owned business, and I just want to support their work. And I always say, when I share my rates, these are my typical rates, but I am always happy to discuss what you got working with. And then I'll usually hear that, and I'm probably down to give a discount. Flag though, if I am giving a really big discount, like an example is there was a small company that I was working with over the last year. Their max was 2K, and I really gave them like a lot for 2K personally because I was just so excited for them and what they were providing or creating. But I always say, just so you're aware, this is a discounted rate. Other creators of my size may not be as flexible with their rates. And if we talk again in the future, these may not be the same rates. So I always, protect myself, protect other creators because I want them to know that like, if someone else says no, like don't shade them for it. I'm doing you a favor.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so smart. Wow. You shared so much with us. So, I mean, when people want to get started, they should literally just start creating the content, right? Do you think they should be outreaching to brands or should they just focus on creating their own content?
So brands are gonna want to pay you when they have clear evidence that you reach their target consumer. So that takes time, right? It doesn't take years, but it doesn't take weeks. So it really just depends on how frequently you show up. So if I've been showing up once a week as much as I can post, yeah, it might take you a year before you have that evidence, before you have that engaged community on this topic to prove to this brand that they should hire me. But if I'm posting twice a day, which is crazy. But if I'm posting twice a day for 2 months, I've probably done all the evidence, right? So
Yeah.
it's not really like when do I reach out to brands? It's like when do you have the proof that you have an engaged community? And that's really what they're going to be looking for. I also really suggest once creators have, I feel like everyone's thrown this word around, but now it's a buzzword again. But signature series. So like if you have a series, if you have a specific style, maybe it's cinematic or like fun transitions or whatever. But like if you have or like skits, if you do something specific that's like ownable and you and unique to you, great time to reach out to brands because you probably have proof, like the series has been going on. You have proof that it's been successful, and then you can go back and say, do you want to be a part of that? Which is usually really fun for them. So that's when I'd kind of reach out. But again, that all takes showing up and finding consistency, which you will not find consistency unless you feel super confident in what you're doing.
Amazing. I just have I'd like one other quick question for you. So with TikTok being threatened many times, I saw a decline in TikTok campaigns. I'm wondering if you saw the same thing and what your thoughts are now. Should people be focused back on it or like, what's your take?
Oh, I mean that was my biggest prediction for 2025. I was like, what year are we in? Was less TikTok campaigns because brands are afraid and they don't know where it's going, and that has 100% been the case.
Yeah.
I would say if you haven't already, and I feel like hopefully most smart creators have already started to make communities elsewhere, do that. But other than Instagram is still the number one place that brands are hiring creators, I will say. Like, if you have an Instagram following, you're probably getting reached out to by brands. The alternative, there's two other ones that kind of like have surprised me. LinkedIn has really surprised me. Brands hiring creators who have a really good LinkedIn presence, also hiring speakers through LinkedIn. So, for example, we have a creator who's very micro on Instagram, bigger on TikTok, but isn't really getting a lot of TikTok campaigns, just as we're talking about, but is getting really amazing speaking engagements because they continue to show up on LinkedIn. So, works out for them. And then YouTube Shorts has been a big ask lately. So definitely, I think those three areas would be really good. And for YouTube, again, because of Shorts, you don't have to go on YouTube and make the long, like, 10-minute videos. You can just repost your reels, repost your TikToks there. Just try some things out. We have a few creators who this month were celebrating hitting 100K on YouTube, and it's because of YouTube Shorts. They
Wow.
don't do that much long form content. So
Amazing. Okay. Would you suggest that, because we have YouTube for the podcast, would you suggest that I just use the same YouTube channel for like all my shorts and the podcast, or a different channel?
I don't know. I feel like, because again, personal brand versus like a product. I feel like podcasts are products unless they've been already integrated into your personal brand, right? So like if it has a standalone social media, probably not,
Okay.
but it's not, you're not missing out on not using that, if that makes sense, because since it's not going to do so much for you to just like start throwing in, your personal content or your personal brand, starting a personal brand YouTube right now would be the same amount of work. You're either going to start doing this action or start a new channel. And I feel like starting a new channel probably gives you a better chance at developing like a personal YouTube brand. One person I'd really look at, she's a creator who I really admire. Her name's Lucy Fink, Lucie. She has been actually was YouTube first, Instagram second,
Okay.
but she did start a podcast, and I think that the way she did it was she integrated the podcast into her personal brand.
Got it.
Or let me just see. Oh my gosh, so this is very interesting. Not us having a case study moment right now. Her podcast, The Real Stuff Pod, has its own YouTube, but she posts highlights and clips in her personal YouTube. So it's a good way, I think, to maybe like take advantage of all the content you are creating.
Yeah.
But it seems like she did it the other way, where like she had the existing personal brand, started weaving in some of the like clips from her podcast,
Yeah.
but ultimately the podcast still lives on its own.
Okay. I think on Instagram it's easier because the podcast does have its own page. So I just do a collaborator. So it's easy because it just shows up on both. But with YouTube, I feel like it's been something I've been wanting to get into. And I'm like, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what works for people.
Yeah. Cool. Is there anything I didn't ask you? I mean, I asked you so much. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to share with people or anything that you want to leave people with?
I am like, yeah, you did ask her so much and it was so thorough. I will say, ooh, okay. So one thing to know about building a creator career is brand partnerships are obviously like the big shiny object. They are probably the first way a lot of people make money because brands are just constantly looking for creators, even if it's just UGC, right? So making content for the brand's platforms. But it's not the only way to make money, and you'd be doing yourself a disservice if that's the only thing you chased. So content creation, monetization,
Mhm.
some loaded phrase. To me, that means making money from your content. It can be through our partnerships, but it can also be through the platforms. It can also be through selling products, digital products. It can also be you've shown up as such a big authority that people are hiring you for extra work. I have a client of mine who just got a consulting 6-month contract because they really trusted her expertise based on how she's showing up. That is amazing. So you want to make sure that you don't narrow yourself into, if I didn't make money working with brands, I am not successful, because there's so many other ways to make money as a creator.
Definitely. Yeah. And I've seen that in my own business through coaching, through speaking, through leading workshops, through paid workshops, right? Like to paid workshops to consumer courses, things like that. So yeah, I love that you added that in as well. Lizette, this has been such a great interview. Thank you so much for your knowledge. So, for those of you listening who want to follow Lizette, where can they connect with you, work with you, and follow?
So I'm at Lissette Calv. I'm sure you'll see the spelling in the title or show notes. And you can follow myself there to get that big, 360 picture of myself as an entrepreneur, running a creator agency, being a creator, and talking to creators. And then Influence with Impact is our company. If you follow them, you will get strictly just creator advice, which some people, that's all you want. So go for it. And you can work with us in different ways. I think we pride ourselves on having multiple, for multiple budgets and learning styles. So definitely just peruse through our website, whether it's a coaching setting, a group setting, just taking a solo product or course and doing it by yourself. You've got something for you.
Amazing. And we will link your socials, your website, all of that down below in the show notes. Lissette, thank you so much for coming on. And for those of you listening, if you took anything away from this episode, take a screenshot, make sure that you tag us both. We want to know. If you have additional questions for Lissette, let me know so that we can have her on for a part 2. And thank you so much, Lissette.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Make sure to visit theericacruz.com. That's Erica with a K, where you can subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. You can help this podcast grow by supporting me with an Apple Podcast rate and review. If you took anything away from this episode, I invite you to take a screenshot and share it on social media so that your favorite badass Latinas can also check it out. Be sure to tag me at the Erica Cruz. That's Erica with a K, because you know I want to see it. If you're ready to join the revolution and be a part of the Courage Driven Latina community, visit couragedrivenlatina.com to get more information and join the waitlist. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.